Week one of the college football season is upon us, and that means all-star visit lists across the country. Let's head to the SEC, starting with Blake Alderman to see who will be on Florida's campus.
No cupcakes for Florida week one. They've got number 19, Miami, coming to the Swamp. It's a big in state rivalry. Maybe these two teams don't play as much as what you would see in a typical rivalry game, but two teams in state squaring off is going to draw attention from guys in the state of Florida. So it's a pretty deep group of guys that are expected to be in attendance for that game. I think probably the more notable uncommitted guy in the 25 class as far as Florida's end is four-star linebacker Ty Jackson right there out of Seminole Ridge in Loxahatchee, Florida. He's one of their top, if not the top, uncommitted target right now for Florida. Linebacker's a big position for them. They're certainly trying to flip plenty of guys right now, hoping that a season can draw some attention. Guys like Jarquez Carter, Bryce Fitzgerald, DJ Pickett, Malik Autry, those guys committed elsewhere are some names expected on the visitor list for Florida. Super deep list of guys there in the 2026 class. Top to bottom, it's a really good group of guys that are expected in there. I think that probably wide receiver, maybe edge, defensive line, and then that offensive line group are some of maybe the more notable positions of expected guys there on Florida's visitor list. So guys like Johnny Jones, Chancellor Campbell, Micah Smith, Chancellor Barclay, Cannon Pickett. Those are some of the guys on the offensive line that are expected. It's not a state that typically produces a lot of offensive linemen, so it's a little different in that 26 cycle for Florida to have so many targets right there in their backyard. So it's a really good chance for Florida or even Miami, however this game goes. It's a good chance to make an impression early on for those 2026 guys. So that's kind of the key that you want to do there. Obviously, you're trying to flip guys in 25, but really loaded group of list of names that are expected in there for Florida. So it's going to be a busy week confirming names. We'll have everything up to date on Swamp 24/7. And now let's head to Georgia to hear from Benjamin Wolk about the Bulldogs and their big game in week one against Clemson.
Thanks, Blake. And in Georgia's case, it's a slightly different visitors list than some other places because it's not a home game for Georgia. It's a neutral site game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium against Clemson. And so that's not your typical Athens game day visit, but it does give you a chance to get some guys at a Georgia game in person for that first week of the year. And so Georgia's definitely going to do that. And you've got to start with five-star defensive lineman Justice Terry. He's going to make a signing day decision, but he's really down to three schools: Georgia, Alabama, and Florida State. Georgia's going to get him to Athens at some point this year too, but for him to be at week one when Georgia plays against Clemson in a neutral site environment, that's a big deal for the Bulldogs, and he is without a doubt the most important visitor who will be at this Georgia-Clemson game. Beyond Justice Terry in the 2025 class, some guys that I would expect to be on campus that are really important: running backs Usmani Kroma and Minnesota commit Shane Marshall. Those are two running backs that are really high on Georgia's board for running backs coach Josh Crawford. I think that there's a good chance that at least one of those guys ends up in Georgia's 2025 class. For them to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium for that opener will definitely be a big deal as well. Looking at a couple of guys that are committed elsewhere, we talked about Shane Marshall. You've got Braxton Kyle, a defensive lineman that's committed to Rutgers. You've got Jeremiah McLeod, a teammate of Usmani Kroma, who's a defensive lineman committed to Florida. Both of those guys have said that they plan on being at the Georgia-Clemson game for the opener as well. And then Georgia's really going to be looking ahead to the 2026 and 2027 classes, and they're not going to be short on star power in those recruiting cycles as well, going to be in Atlanta for the opener. In the 2026 class, you've got five-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson out of Grayson. You're probably not going to find a bigger prospect in the 2026 class for Georgia than Atkinson. He's going to be at the Georgia-Clemson game. And then you look at the tight end position. You know that Todd Hartley is always known for getting ahead of the curve when it comes to getting tight ends. He had two in the 2025 class committed really early. He's already looking ahead to the 2026 and 2027 cycle. Braden Fogel in the 2026 class will be a tight end that's on a visit for the Georgia-Clemson game. And then Mark Bowman, who is going to be one of the best in the country at the tight end position from the West Coast, he's going to be in Atlanta for that game as well. So Georgia already getting ahead on the 2026 and 2027 classes, but also already in line to have a couple of huge 2025 visitors as well. All right, now over to Andrew Hattersley at Texas A&M.
Thanks, Ben. The Mike Elko era will kick off on a huge stage on Saturday night with number 7 ranked Notre Dame heading to Kyle Field. College game day is going to be in town, and so are several top Texas A&M targets, both in the 2025, 2026, and 2027 class. Obviously, a lot of Texas A&M current commits are going to be in town, including Kiarty Armstrong, Kelshawn Johnson, Kobe Sellers, Landon Ring, Kelvion Riggins, just to name a few who are planning to be there. And they will also have a chance to hit the ground running a little bit in the 2026 and 2027 class. A&M already has 2 commits. Markel Ford and Deuce Gilbert would expect both of them to be there. And then some of their top targets in the 2026 class are also planning to be in town, including top 247 quarterback Helaman Kasuga and Braylon Womack. Kasuga, this will be a return trip for him. He spent multiple days in College Station in June, got to work with Colin Klein, and now we'll get to see a game day atmosphere for the first time. And for Braylon Womack, this is a chance to see 2 of his top schools in Notre Dame and Texas A&M. Womack was in town at the end of July for A&M's recruiting pool party, and now he'll get the chance to also see a game day experience for the first time. There's also going to be several in-state targets in town, and Jamarian Carlton, Jalen Lott, Javion Osborne, London Smith are just a few of the 2026 targets that'll be in town. And Devontre Kirkland, who picked up an offer from Texas A&M this summer, will headline the 2027 group, and it's expected to be a strong group there as well. Texas A&M currently sitting with a top 10 class in the 2025 class. A win would do wonders for their efforts in the 2026 and 2027 class. Just a massive first opportunity for Mike Elko and his staff to leave a big impression on several big targets this upcoming weekend.
Thanks to Blake, Benjamin, and Andrew for the great insight. Make sure to keep up with not only these sites, but the entire 24/7 Sports Network, which is your home for the best recruiting intel all season long.